Hi everyone, welcome to this new episode of Muse Coffee Corner. Today we are going to talk about the ideal tech stack in hospitality, and we are welcoming one wonderful guest, well known in the industry. If you don't know Ira, it's the moment to get used to know Ira a bit more. Ira, good morning. Thanks for joining. Pretty early for you. Ira, I will let you introduce yourself if you want to. Again, I guess that some people might know you, so please go ahead.
Of course, thank you for having me, Damien. It's really nice to be here. This is my favorite topic, as you know. I just recently published a book, Hotel Tech 101, where I talk about it a lot, of course. But a little bit about me. I've been in the industry about 20 years in very different roles, but last 15 in technology space. I co-founded an RMS, but then was also part of different technology companies in the hospitality tech space. And lately, I've been consulting and teaching hospitality technology at San Diego State University. I also joined Room Angel Foundation, which is a disruptive company that is disrupting distribution space in our industry. So you will definitely hear more about it from me and from others in the upcoming years. So it's very exciting. And again, happy to be here and answer all the difficult questions that you will have for me.
Thanks a lot, Ira. My pleasure. And yes, thanks for doing the introduction because you have so many hats that it would have been a nightmare for me to present yourself the correct way. So at least it's done. Thanks about it. If we jump into it, let's talk about the topic of the day. Again, the idea is to have a coffee corner time, let's say. We could make it probably hours and hours, benefiting from your expertise. But in few words, if we have to talk about the ideal hotel tech stack and about the trends, what for you
Mhm.
matters the most nowadays? What has kind of changed before, let's say, a few years ago? Or what did you see in the industry? What we should consider right now?
Yeah, I really love that picture because it actually tells a lot about the current tech stacks that are
Yes.
assembled in pieces that don't talk to each other, right? I think that's the idea of that picture there. So an ideal tech stack would be one that is seamlessly integrated into the existing workflows of the business without the business having to really bend over to adapt to how the vendor wants them to work, right? This also involves communication, clear and seamless communication between different pieces within that tech stack. And based on what I've heard recently, on average, each hotel has about 19 different elements in their tech stack, right? So it's very complex environment. And I recently designed a diagram of the hotel tech ecosystem. If you can just go on my LinkedIn profile, and it's pinned in the featured section there. And the diagram went viral, but essentially I illustrated the complexity of the tech space in a very, I would say, easy form, and that's why I think it's very popular because it's very easy to understand. But you can see all the different elements that are involved in the picture of building a hotel tech stack. Not all of them are, of course, required, but many of them, I mean, all of them exist, and the hoteliers have all of these things to choose from. So it's very difficult
Yeah.
for them to understand how to assemble their tech stack from these different pieces and what they do and do not need. I would say that there's so many different types of hotels that exist, and there is no one specific ideal tech stack that I would say, okay, these are the elements that you need to connect,
Yeah.
and it's going to be good for everyone. Doesn't work like that in our industry, unfortunately, because there's different types of businesses and different business models and different stakeholders in place. When we talk about the franchise situation, it's a whole new world and a whole
Yeah.
different world. And you probably have question about segments as well somewhere in the future. But depending on the on how you run your business, you would need to adapt your tech stack to that. So an example would be if you are a luxury resort that has a spa, a restaurant, in addition to the rooms, of course, and you have a golf course, you will have
Yes.
a very different tech stack compared to if you're roadside in with 30 rooms. So, but I think the rule of thumb is that the elements have to connect to each other. They have to
Mm,
communicate seamlessly, so you don't have to do anything manually through APIs, not through sending
exactly.
files
Or
once a
Excel.
day. Real-time API is the
Yeah.
thing. Your elements should be cloud-based, not sitting on the premise, on the computer server, dusty server in the back office, and it has to be seamlessly integrated within your workflows. So those are the three things that are must have for all tech stacks,
Yeah.
for all
Yeah.
hotels,
Get it.
100%.
Yeah, very interesting. So yeah, talking a lot about the integration itself, so the technical side, making sure that systems are able to interact between themselves, and also on the operation side, make sure that it's kind of fitting on your operation and what you are really doing, what's your kind of
Yep,
positioning and your model, right?
100%.
Amazing,
100%.
amazing. And if we ask the question, which is written here, how a hotel? So you were talking about your diagram. I guess you talk about the kind of core with distribution model and the kind of so operation, distribution, and the guest experience. Where should we finally start everything? Where should a hotelier focus first when building the tech stack? Because as you mentioned, we have probably around 20 different kind of
Yep,
subcategories, and I guess we can even get more granular into it. So
yep.
probably 100. But where finally should we start? And according to what we do, what is the first point we should take into account?
Honestly, just read my book. That's going to be the first step.
Amazing.
So
Good
the
tip.
thing is that, and I'm not saying that just because I wrote it. It's actually a very good book. It's
Yeah.
the only one, the first and only in the industry on this topic, where you can actually you can sit down and read about all of the things that from A to Z, everything about building a hotel tech stack. This is as simple as that. The reason why I wrote it is because when I started teaching hospitality technology at San Diego State, I realized that by the end of the semester, my students understood more about the technology
Mm.
in hospitality than 90% of people in the industry. The last project that I have them do is assembling a tech stack from scratch. Some of them pick Muse, many of them pick Muse, many of them pick other, companies. What
Yes.
they do realize towards the end of the project is that what matters is the integrations that are available, and they have to start with the PMS, of course, and or rather, they have to start with how the hotel wants to run their business and what elements they want to select, but then they need to find the PMS that can support all those integrations.
Yes.
And this is where the limitation happens. And we can talk more about the, integration dependencies as well, but it's really all about integrations in our space, which they don't realize. Most people don't realize in our
Yeah.
industry even. So, and I wrote this book because I wanted to spread the knowledge past our hospitality school, which is, small portion, a small representation of the industry. So read my book. It's not expensive. It's a very accessible language, and the diagrams that I use in the book
Yes.
are going to help you understand how things work.
Yeah.
Step number one. Step number two, assess how you run your business. Build your use
Perfect.
cases, as we say in the product management, right? So understand, okay, I have the rooms department. I also have the restaurant, or maybe I also have a spa. And then I want to be able to manage my front of house operations, back of house operations, and I want to have a good guest app that communicates with my consumers and drives direct business through, sending promotional messages or whatever. So build your use cases and then look for the vendors that can support these use cases optimally. But then you will end up having to everything really revolves around PMS. So you will end up
Yeah.
really having to narrow your search to the PMSs that can support how you want to run your business. And because of that, there is no situation where one company would be able to provide all of these elements for all kinds of hotels that would have the PMS, the RMS, and
Yes.
CRM and the booking engine and all of those things. It's just like this vendor does not exist. There are, of course, wonderful companies
Yes.
that target different segments and niches of our um, our industry, but they do also support integrations with third-party providers because they do understand that many just won't be satisfied. Many hoteliers won't be satisfied with the products as they are offered within this company because they run their businesses in a different manner because
Yeah.
there's so many different business models in our industry. So PMS is a must-have, of course, in your tech stack. That's you can't really run a hotel without cloud-based good PMS. In my opinion, number two there is distribution, of course. You can't really have a lot of reservations on the books if you are not online. So distribution piece is important. If you're an independent hotel,
Definitely.
you would need a booking engine and a channel manager. If you're a part of a chain, there is a CRS that does all this. So the distribution piece is, of course, critical too. After that, it's really up to you. But in my opinion, you really have to have an RMS, revenue management system. And congratulations on acquiring Atomize, by the way.
Thank you.
So the revenue management is critical for any business because we're all in it for the money, honey, right? So you have to know how to run your business properly with optimal decisions that drive profit, not just revenue. And it's impossible to do manually. Like it's just not possible to do it manually, optimally. So you have to have an RMS. And then, of course, a CRM is nice to have. Some would argue must have, but the adoption rates are only in about 20% range in our industry. The same with RMS, maybe even less. So while we want to believe that those components are required, most hotels don't really realize that. So still an open field in terms of the adoption rate.
Depends on your model also.
100%. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. And if I will jump into the next topic, but at the same time, I will ask a question which is related here. You talk about all the different providers offering different type of solutions. What do you think about the consolidation that we see happening in the industry right now, and the fact that we see big companies? Muse can be a case, but we have also a lot of other examples that happened in the past year with I won't name anyone, but
mergers and
a lot of
acquisitions.
providers. Yeah, exactly. What do you think about that? Is it good finally for the industry? And I'm talking here from a standpoint of a hotelier. How do you see it, and how should a hotelier consider it, let's say?
Yeah, this is a very, very good question. And I love it. And I've been thinking about it ever since, for a while, but I talked about it in my previous book, Hospitality 2.0, which is still relevant. If you're still some people in the industry who haven't read it, please do so.
I will admit I didn't read it so far, and it will change, I promise.
You should, yeah. It's interesting. It's more philosophical, I would say, than the last one.
Yes.
So the thing is that our industry is trying to find a compromise between offering disparate pieces of best in breed and enough integrations, like Muse, for example, has been a lot of integrations to be able to connect all these pieces seamlessly to the PMS, which is the source of truth for major data. And that's the reason why the PMS is at the core of our tech stack, versus offering an umbrella solution, an end-to-end solution that offers it all without having to connect any extra vendors. So how do you find this middle ground, right? And the thing is that because what I have for myself come up with the concept in my head, which I want to believe has some ground because, I've been in the industry and I've done a lot of research. I think that because our industry is very diverse, and there's 1.3 million hotels, which many people don't realize. I think the global inventory of hotels is hugely underestimated due to some the data providers, which I won't name, but those numbers have been skewed drastically towards branded large franchise hotels, ignoring the whole army of independent operators. So altogether, it's roughly 1.3 million of hotels globally in the world altogether. And 1 million of them are in the independent space. And you can imagine how different they all are, right? And even in the branded space, if you take mid-market brands, not the top 10, but companies like, I don't know, Citizen M is one of my favorite ones. I don't know, I just love them. They're tech advanced. But if you take Citizen M and if you take Sonder, for example, two very different companies, the way that they run business is very different. The portfolio of properties they have is very different. There is no way they're going to pick the same vendor for all of their components. So they just have to, and for many, for example, I don't know if I should mention any names, but one of your major competitors is in the specific, has been sitting very firmly in the independent, what we call long tail hospitality space, for that segment works like a charm. End-to-end solution, because they don't want to break their head or pay Ira for consulting, which, Ira charges a lot for consulting. They don't have that budget for Ira to come in and say, you want to pick that PMS, this channel manager, that booking engine, this RMS, and this is how you hook it all up. They're not going to do that. So they're going to go to companies that provide an end-to-end solution, because they just otherwise, like, they just won't. They will just say, I'm not doing it. I'm going to sit with, pen and paper rather than going through that. But there are companies, when it comes to more sophisticated operations, as soon as you get up a little bit in the layers of the complexity of, different types of businesses in our industry, these companies are not going to be satisfied with an end-to-end solution. An example would be, I built Pi for Cloudbase, their RMS solution, right? It works great for companies, for hoteliers, for customers that are in that long tail space, in the independent kind of smaller operator space, because that's a simple, good solution which is inexpensive. They works great. But companies that are businesses, hoteliers that are a little bit more sophisticated, they want atomize, they want duetto, they want ideas. So that's why Cloudbase has decided to open up integrations to these third-party providers, even though it cannibalizes their own RMS product. So this is an example of how you can't really offer an end-to-end solution that works for both, because for all, because of the complexity of the hospitality business and all of these different business models and the fragmentation that exists on the buyer side, the buyer of technology. So that's a long answer, I know, but it is very complex. And I think we're trying to find the middle ground where we can offer both.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic answer, and thank you for sharing your insight and expertise. I think it's exactly the topic here about the different hotel type and how they should approach it. So I think you've answered also perfectly to both of the question in the same time. So that's very nice. I think you've mentioned already about the changes. If we move into finally close this very long coffee break, let's say, I hope it was a double Americano at least. If we have to add on top of that some essential tips for hotelier, we mentioned the integration is key. We mentioned, hey, look at your business first before to make any move, and make sure that what you are going to do fits really what you are doing and not what you think your competitor or someone else is doing. What would you have to add on top of that if you had one last tip for a hotelier here?
Yeah, I would say, as I mentioned briefly, there are different types of businesses in different segments, right? Yes. So there's at least three that are very distinct categories, which people don't even realize. They think it's between independent and branded, and that's it. But there's independent operators, which is a huge portion. The biggest portion of our market is independent operators. On the other side of the spectrum, we have large brands that are franchised, that have franchise business model. And in the middle, we have what I call mid-market brands, because they're in the middle. And the difference between the mid-market brands and the franchise brands is actually bigger than between the mid-market brands and independents. And I think that most people don't realize that, but because of the business model. So the suggestion, the tip would be different depending on which segment you're in. If you're a franchisee of a large franchise brand, there is not much you can do. I'm sorry. My tip would be go in the independent space, honestly. And I've been very vocal about that too. Franchise business model has killed that, that part of our industry. Like, it's just counterproductive overall. And there's more to it. If you want to know more, read my book. But it just doesn't work for anyone except for the franchisor. So if you're a franchisee, again, reconsider. That would be my tip. If you're in the mid-market, if you have a brand that you operate and you have a portfolio of hotels, chances are you'll have to select best in breed. So it's going to be a complex project. Approach it as a project. Assign a team to your project. Your IT department has to be very deeply involved. If you have one, hopefully you do. All of your executives have to be senior level, C-level executives have to be involved. chances are you will have to hire a consultant to help guide you through that process, because it is very complex, and it's going to be a bit of a tough project, but you will be happy you did it, because innovation is must. There's so much more you can do with technology. You can be so much more efficient, so much more profitable, and provide much better customer service if you use proper cloud-based technology. AI, not AI, whole separate conversation, but at least use cloud technology to start with. If you're in the independent space, perhaps your best choice is to use an end-to-end solution. And there are, quite a few of them out there, because it's just easier. But again, definitely invest in technology, embrace technology. Don't be sitting in stone age, because technology is a must, and there's just so much more that you can do if you have the proper optimal tech stack that is integrated within your workflows, and all the elements are talking to each other properly, and you just have a much better, happier life.
I would tend to agree, Ira. Well, Ira, thanks a lot. It was really insightful to have you today. I couldn't say how grateful we are to have you and host you today to talk about this. So thanks again. Good luck with all the projects and all the different hats you have. To the people who have listened to us today, thanks for joining. Let's keep updated, following us on LinkedIn or subscribing to our newsletter. And I will tell you, see you very soon, or chat with you very soon, let's say, for a new coffee conversation. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.